Adolescence exploded in popularity almost instantly after its premiere, quickly becoming one of the most talked about British dramas of the year. It's raw, intense, and unafraid to confront the harsh realities of inherited hatred towards women. Audiences were stunned not only by its realistic and emotionally charged plot, but also by the incredibly powerful performances, highlighting the young lead actor Owen Cooper, whose portrayal captured the brutal tenderness of growing up under pressure. But personally, I was completely blown away by Stephen Graham. At the center of the show's emotional gravity, Graham stands out. An actor known not just for his intensity, but for the vulnerability he brings to complex, often deeply flawed men. In Adolescence, he continues his career-long exploration of masculinity, not as a performance of power, but as a survival instinct, a trauma response, and sometimes a ticking time bomb. Hi everyone, you're watching Femme Fatale's Heels Show, where we talk about women, film, and women in film. But sometimes we make an exception. After watching Adolescence, I couldn't stop thinking about Stephen Graham's performance. There was something so raw and honest about the way he played this complicated, damaged man. It stuck with me. I ended up diving into more of his recent work, 1,000 Blows, Boiling Point, The Virtues, and what really hit me was how deeply he explores what it means to be a man when you're hurting, when you're angry, when the world doesn't give you space to be vulnerable. I can admit that this isn't my usual territory. I mostly focus on feminist cinema and stories by and about women, but something about Graham's work really pulled me in. So in this video, I want to talk about Stephen Graham's performances in recent years and how he portrays toxic masculinity not just as a social force, but as a deeply personal, often inherited wound. I think it's fair to say that Stephen Graham occupies a unique space as an actor. He's built an incredibly varied filmography, working with directors like Guy Ritchie and Martin Scorsese, and appearing in massive franchises like Pirates of the Caribbean and Venom. And yet, he somehow remains just under the radar internationally. Outside the UK, he's still not a household name, but for those who know his work, he's easily one of the most compelling actors of his generation. Like, really, look at his filmography. Devil works hard, but Stephen Graham works harder. Obviously, I can't cover all of his performances, but if there's a role of his that you think resonates with the themes in this video, feel free to share it in the comments. In Boiling Point, Stephen Graham plays a head chef trying to hold it all together during one of the worst nights of his life. The whole thing is shot in one take, which makes it feel super intense and real, like you're right there in the chaos with him. What really stands out is how Graham shows a man totally worn down by the pressure, trying to juggle work, personal struggles, and just not having the space to deal with any of it.
I know, I'm really sorry. I tried to phone him, but I tried to phone him, and just everything's gone to shit in work, that's all, but I tried to phone him. What do you mean? No, of course I love him. But tell him I love him. No, tell him he should know that I love him.
Long before The Bear made kitchen dramas cool, Boiling Point was already giving us one of the most honest, stressful looks into that world, with Graham right at the heart of it, falling apart in the most human way. Till this day, the kitchen is seen as masculine, chaotic, competitive, intense, and full of gripping energy. Even in Boiling Point, with its female characters, that masculine environment still dominates. Even though the character of Carly, played by Vanette Robinson, is trying her best to hold everything together, the kitchen is still very much defined by male egos, aggressive behavior, and a culture that doesn't leave much room for vulnerability or emotional support. And the film really uses that environment to underline some pretty classic narratives about toxic masculinity, especially how it's ingrained in the workplace and can have devastating effects on everyone, even those trying to break free from it. Through Graham's character, we see the cost of that pressure. The kitchen isn't just a setting. It's a reflection of a broader system where men are pushed to keep up appearances, even if it means ignoring their own well-being. By the end of Boiling Point, we see Stephen Graham's character completely unraveling under the immense pressure of trying to balance his high-stress job with his family life. The cracks in his composure widen, and he turns to drugs to cope, further highlighting the toll that toxic masculinity takes on men who feel they must constantly suppress their vulnerability.
I had a backstory where it was kind of issues with his father and stuff, so it's him trying not to be what his father was, but his father was an alcoholic. So for him, it's always been a part of his DNA. It's been there since he was a young boy. And to watch that kind of, the upbringing that he must have had, and he's trying his hardest not to be like that with his son, and then eventually you end up creating the same mistakes that you've seen.
This breakdown isn't just a one-off moment. It's part of a larger pattern in Graham's roles. Substance abuse often plays a key role in his characters, reflecting the devastating effects of living in a world where emotional expression and weakness are seen as signs of failure. In The Virtues, the theme of substance abuse resurfaces, this time deeply intertwined with trauma. Stephen Graham plays Joseph, a man haunted by his past, struggling with the fallout of childhood abuse. His use of alcohol and drugs becomes a way to numb the pain and confusion he can't seem to escape. What's striking here is how Graham's portrayal of Joseph doesn't just show a man spiraling, but rather a man attempting to survive within the emotional wreckage left by years of trauma. The character's substance abuse isn't just a plot point. It's a direct response to the emotional and psychological toll of his experiences. And it's another example of how Graham explores the complicated intersection between masculinity, vulnerability, and trauma. Through Joseph, we see a man who can't show his emotions in a way society expects, so he turns to substances as a means of survival. What's particularly interesting about The Virtues is how it flips the usual portrayal of substance abuse in masculine culture. In many films, alcohol and drug use are often depicted as symbols of power, success, or rebellious coolness, something that makes a character seem more rugged or stylish. But The Virtues takes a deeper, more psychological approach. Instead of glamorizing Joseph's drinking and drug use, it focuses on the underlying trauma driving him to those substances. The show doesn't let us romanticize it. There's no glossy surface here. Instead, it presents addiction as something far more complex, a coping mechanism for a man who is grappling with a deeply painful past. One of the center topics in the series is S.A. Graham's character was sexually abused by his stepfather, and this trauma is a crucial part of his backstory and plays a significant role in his emotional struggles throughout the series. The series doesn't show the assault explicitly, but it explores its long-lasting effects on Joseph's psyche and behavior. The trauma manifests in various ways: his struggles with anger, his difficulty in forming healthy relationships, and his tendency to self-destruct through substance abuse. There are moments where his past is alluded to through both his flashbacks and the way he interacts with others, especially in his more vulnerable moments. The series handles the topic with sensitivity and focuses on how the trauma has shaped Joseph's perception of masculinity. His need to suppress emotions, the societal expectation that men be stoic or unfeeling, and the way these pressures contribute to his ongoing battles with addiction and his fractured sense of self. It's a complex exploration of how sexual trauma can affect not only one's personal life, but also one's sense of identity, especially within the constraints of traditional masculine norms. At the beginning of 2025, everyone seemed to talk about adolescence, and for good reason. But almost at the same time, 1,000 Blows quietly premiered, and while it didn't get the same explosive attention, it deserves just as much conversation. Set against the gritty backdrop of Victorian-era London and centered on the world of bare-knuckle boxing, the series once again gives Stephen Graham a complex, emotionally charged role of Sugar Goodson that explores masculinity, power, and violence, this time through the lens of class and colonialism. Sugar Goodson feels like a man out of time, someone clinging tightly to a version of masculinity that's beginning to slip through his fingers. He embodies that old-school, hardened fighter archetype, shaped by violence and control. But as the world around him starts to shift, through social changes, new cultural voices, and evolving ideas of power, he struggles to keep up. Instead of adapting, Sugar digs in deeper, becoming more volatile, more isolated. While another central male character, Jamaican immigrant Hezekiah Moscow, played by Malachi Kirby, reflects a very different kind of masculinity. Through his journey, the series critiques British colonialism and explores how masculinity can evolve beyond violence and dominance. Hezekiah's character carries the weight of displacement and racial injustice. But instead of turning to aggression, he begins to carve out a path rooted in resilience, dignity, and community. In contrast, Graham's character is like a wounded dog, sinking his teeth into the past, clinging to those so-called good old days when brutality and strength were seen as the ultimate markers of manhood. His portrayal is a portrait of someone who can't keep up with change because he's too deeply rooted in the ideals of toxic masculinity. He's not just unwilling to evolve, he's actively fighting against the new world because the old one is the only place where he knows who he's supposed to be.
Bare fists are gone.
Sugar justifies his own behavior by convincing himself that the world made him this way, that it taught him to be aggressive, to dominate, to survive at all costs. In his eyes, there are no alternatives, no softer paths. Vulnerability is weakness, and change feels like erasure.
There's something wrong with me. But the thing that's wrong with me, I can punch, and I can feel that I'm hurting it.
He doesn't question the roles he was taught. He clings to them. Because letting go would mean admitting there might be another way to live, and he's never been shown what that looks like. In season 1, all of this tension culminates in a brutal moment where Sugar beats his own brother nearly to death. It's a horrifying act, one the show never excuses or tries to soften. At the same time, it doesn't paint Sugar as a one-dimensional villain. Instead, it portrays him as someone who is deeply tormented, consumed by the very version of masculinity he was taught to embody. His violence isn't just directed outward. It's a reflection of the chaos and pain eating him alive from the inside. The series holds space for both accountability and empathy, making his character all the more haunting. Season 2 of 1,000 Blows hasn't premiered yet, but the first season leaves us with a quiet suggestion that Sugar Goodson might be standing at a crossroads. Beneath all the rage and resistance, there's a hint that he could be starting to question the life he's built and the man he's become. It's subtle but powerful. The show plants the idea that even someone so entrenched in toxic masculinity might still be capable of change, however slow or painful that process may be. And that brings us back to Adolescence, the series that's finally putting Stephen Graham in front of a wider international audience. After years of quietly delivering some of the most emotionally rich and layered performances in British film and television, Adolescence feels like a moment of recognition. It pulls together so many of the themes he's explored before: pain, pride, vulnerability, survival, and places them in a story that's both deeply personal and socially relevant. In many ways, his role here is a culmination of the work he's been doing for years, and it's exciting to see more people finally taking notice. Stephen Graham's involvement in Adolescence goes beyond just his acting. He's also one of the creators behind the show. The series resonates with him on a personal level, shaped by his own life experiences. Graham has spoken about how real-life events and the struggles that come with them, especially regarding the challenges of fatherhood, societal pressures, and the complexities of masculinity, deeply influence the development of his character. His work here feels more authentic because it draws from real pain, offering an honest portrayal of a man who isn't just another cliche of toxic masculinity. In Adolescence, Graham's character starts off as a very typical masculine father figure. He embodies the stoic, tough persona often associated with fatherhood, the kind of man who believes his job is to provide, protect, and remain emotionally distant. At first, he doesn't show much vulnerability, keeping his struggles to himself and trying to maintain control of a situation that's rapidly spiraling out of hand. However, in a few key moments, we begin to see cracks in this facade. The first moment of vulnerability comes when he admits to his lawyer that he doesn't know what to do, a rare moment of honesty in which he reveals how overwhelmed and lost he feels. Later in the episode, when the weight of the situation becomes too much to bear, he breaks down and cries, exposing the deep emotional turmoil he's been hiding. By the final episode, Graham's performance reaches new heights. In the emotionally charged finale, his character's breakdown is nothing short of heartbreaking.
When I was his age, my dad used to fucking batter me.
Sometimes he'd take the belt to me and he'd fucking whack me, and he'd whack me. And I promised myself, I said, when I had my own kids, I'd never do that. And I didn't, did I? I just wanted to be better.
And that kind of thing comes back from those kind of incidents. I remember cousins and uncles telling me, like when they were in school and stuff like that, we had corporal punishment, where they used to get the strap and the ruler. So it was that kind of generational thing, do you know what I mean? Where that kind of level of violence and aggression was used on.
The way he portrays the raw, unfiltered grief of a father who's lost control, and the way his tears come pouring out, is a masterclass in emotional acting. It's tense, painful, and utterly gut-wrenching, and it stands as one of the most brilliant, impactful scenes in the series. It's a powerful reminder that despite all the tough exterior, the emotional weight of his actions is far too much to carry alone.
So if my dad made me, how did I make that?
Diving into Stephen Graham's filmography has truly been an emotional journey. From his portrayal of men caught in the grip of toxic masculinity to characters struggling with deep emotional pain, his work constantly challenges our perceptions of what it means to be a man. The complexity he brings to each role, whether it's a father, a victim of trauma, or a man on the verge of losing everything, speaks volumes about his dedication to truly understanding the nuances of masculinity in all its forms. What stands out about Graham's performances is not just his remarkable ability to capture the raw, sometimes uncomfortable, emotional depth of his characters, but also his commitment to breaking away from the typical one-dimensional portrayals of masculinity in film. His work shows a profound understanding of the topic, and it's clear that he approaches each role with immense care and respect for the characters he brings to life. For all of these reasons, his dedication to these roles deserves nothing but respect, and his contributions to modern cinema continue to be invaluable.
We all come from women.
Yeah.
Can't exist without women, do you know what I mean?
Thank you for watching this video. We will be very grateful for your support, so leave comments, share your thoughts as well as this essay, and see you in the next video.